Guys, so in this video I'm going to talk about planning a lesson, and actually this video is going to give you 7 hints for planning your first lesson. So this video is not really for advanced teachers or very experienced teachers, but there are suggestions in here for everyone, and I'm sure there's something that, even if you're an experienced teacher, something you can learn from this. This is adapted from chapter 2, which is called Starting Out, from a book called Learning Teaching by Jim Scrivener. It's a really great book. It covers lots of the kind of basic aspects of teaching and kind of basic teaching techniques. It's good for all sorts of teachers, beginner teachers, and even advanced teachers, who have lots of experience as well. Okay, so let's get started on these 7 hints. First is use the course book if there is one. Okay, so a course book shouldn't be everything in your class. You shouldn't feel like the course book is, you're a slave to your course book and you can't do anything except follow the course book. But the course book does give you a kind of basic anchor or a kind of core syllabus that you can follow. So it is a good idea to have a look at the textbook or the course book, and they're usually well organized. The syllabus of a textbook is usually well organized. You can find a good range of vocabulary, expressions, grammar, subjects, and so on. So it is a good idea to follow the course book if you do have one. One suggestion about this, if you have a course book, is to find the contents page to see the vocabulary, grammar, and skills. Okay, so even if you're not using the course book as your main material, or if you're planning to have lots of other activities, finding the contents page that lists things like the vocabulary, the structures, the different types of activities, that will help you with your materials selection and developing other activities as well. And as I say, textbooks are usually well organized and they give you a good guide, okay, especially for beginner teachers. So have a look at the contents page and then you can go online to find extra materials. Now, if you don't have a textbook, you can find materials online. You can find lots of ideas. There's resources for TESOL online. Here are some of my favorite TESOL resource websites. Okay, the first one is ESL Collective. This is a free website, has free resources. You have to create a login with your email and a password, but once you've done that, that doesn't cost anything, and once you've done that, everything's free as well. On there you can find thousands and thousands of free worksheets and even presentation files like PPT files. A lot of them are very well made, not all of them, but a lot of them are very well made. So if you have a class coming, a special class like a Halloween class, or a topic like shopping or something, or going to the restaurant, go and take a look at ESL Collective. There's lots of good materials on there, and after you download it, you can adapt them and change them to fit your situation. Now, similar to ESL Collective is another website called busyteacher.org. Okay, this is quite similar to ESL Collective. The range of materials and the amount of materials is a bit smaller, but it's a similar kind of site. And I think that this one, you don't need a login. Okay, both of those sites are free, and they both have quite advanced search features. Okay, so you can search keywords, but you can also search things like level and focus, like grammar or vocabulary or reading skills and so on. Okay, so those two are my favorite kind of general resource websites. Now, if you're teaching adults or higher level students, there's a really great website called Breaking News English. This website has free lesson plans, quite detailed lesson plans based on news stories. Okay, so if your students are interested in kind of current events and reading about the news, finding out about the world, Breaking News English has lots of kind of current events. There are articles, there's listening materials, and lots of materials for activities like vocabulary, grammar, and so on. Okay, so it's a great website. It has different levels of materials as well, and it's all free. Okay, The last one I want to share with you is called Kiz Club, K-I-Z Club. Okay, and this one's for young learners. And again, this is free. I only share free resources if I can. Kiz Club has very nice materials for young learners, really high quality. The design of the materials is very, very nice. They have a range of things like phonics, flashcards, storybook materials. They even have mini books that you can download and print. There's lots of good stuff on there. So if you teach young learners, go and have a look at Kiz Club and take a look through the menu and see what you can find. Okay, so those are my top tips for resources if you don't have a textbook. And there are many more links on my website. Okay, so if you're teaching, you're probably very busy, you don't have time to make materials every day. It's a good idea to have a good list of resource websites that you can check. Okay, so those are my tips for that. Now, number 2. So when you're planning a lesson, one way of thinking about it is a sequence. A lesson is a sequence of activities, okay? So some activities that kind of join together. So when you're planning a lesson, plan a series of linked activities, okay? The activities may have a similar topic, or they may have a similar set of vocabulary, or they may have a similar grammar point, for example. Okay, but generally they should be linked in some way, and one way of planning a lesson is just planning these kind of linked activities to take you through the lesson. Some other tips here: be flexible about time and include 1 or 2 extra activities just in case. Okay, now if it's your first class and you don't know the students very well, it's very difficult to judge how quickly they will work through the materials and also what kind of questions and problems they may have. So it is a good idea to have a few extra activities or materials like worksheets, just in case the students are working quickly or perhaps the material is a little bit easy for them and you can kind of go through it a little bit quicker. Okay, and be flexible. If you don't finish everything you planned, that's fine, just save it for the next class. Now, the last tip here is that every class is different. Some will ask more questions and others will work quicker. So be prepared to deviate from your plan if needed. Okay, some of the best lessons that I've had involved the students just randomly asking questions, and suddenly we went off the lesson plan and ended up talking about something different. So, be flexible. Don't feel like you only have to follow your lesson plan. They might show interest in something different, and you can explain or discuss something different that you didn't expect when you made the lesson plan. Okay, so those are my general tips for planning a lesson. I'm going to have more videos later on about specific ways of organizing a lesson and activities. Let's move on. Number 3. So in your first class or in your first week or 2, it's a good idea to learn something about your students, okay? Try to find out what they're interested in, their hobbies, their interests, and so on. So a good thing to use is an icebreaker activity. These are great for a first class. There are many different types of icebreakers. So I suggest you find a few icebreakers that you like. They're going to be different for different levels, like an icebreaker for kids or beginner students might be different from an icebreaker for advanced or adult students. Okay, but if you find a few icebreakers that you like, it just helps your first week to go a little bit easier, and also, of course, you can find out about the students and the students can find out about you. So the last tip here on the slide: plan a suitable activity so that students can learn about you and each other. Okay, so icebreakers are also for the teacher to kind of, gently introduce yourself. Okay, let's move on. Number 4, plan student-centered activities. Okay, so here are my suggestions. Don't talk. Your job as a teacher is not to explain, it is to facilitate. So get students talking, maximize student talk time, and minimize teacher talk time. Okay, those are my suggestions. Now, I know in these videos it's just me talking, but when you are teaching language, you shouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now, okay? when you are in a class, when you're in a language class, your job is to develop the learner's language, not your own language, okay? So explaining, and teacher talk is not good for a language classroom. So minimize teacher talk time. Try to get the students involved, ask lots of questions, give them activities. A good teacher should not be controlling the class all the time, okay? A good teacher will have periods of the lesson where the students are doing everything, not the teacher. Okay, so you can plan activities that are student-centered, and at the bottom of the slide here, I have a kind of a basic organization of how you plan activities. So number one, lead-in or warm-up. So here you have like the kind of warm-up steps, the preparation steps, introducing the topic, the context, maybe modeling some of the language. And then number two, set up and run the activity. So here you need to think about things like how the class is organized and how the students are going to be communicating, what kind of materials they need, how you're going to give instructions, and then also how long will the activity go on and what is the result of the activity. You know, what are the students aiming for by doing the activity? So it's a good idea to have some kind of aim or objective for the activity. Just a little tip, something like a role play, sometimes it doesn't really have an aim, okay? So if you're doing something like a role play, think about how you can kind of create an aim for the role play. Perhaps students have to share some information or complete a worksheet while they're doing the role play, okay? Okay, so that's number two, set up and run the activity. And then finally, you need to think about how you're going to close the activity and how you're going to check all the results of the activity and transition to the next activity. Remember, a lesson is a series of activities. So you have to think about, okay, this activity and this activity, how am I going to transition between the two? Okay, so that's number four. Let's move on. Number five. It's a good idea to make a basic written plan of the order, okay? Now, in these kind of TESOL courses, or you know, if you're doing kind of teacher training, you're often asked to write detailed lesson plans. But even if you're teaching, it is a good idea to have like a basic lesson plan for yourself. Even if it's not perfectly written, just a basic lesson plan can help you. So you might just have like a list, almost like a shopping list, a list of the activities, a little bit of a plan, you know, what kind of materials you might need, and so on. So that can really help, especially if you're new to teaching. You know, when you're new, it's a bit difficult to do things that aren't planned. So it's a good idea to plan everything in advance. Okay, let's move on. Number 6. Consider the aim of the lesson. Okay, what is the final result of the lesson? Actually, this is one of the first things you should consider before you start choosing activities and materials and thinking about the beginning of the lesson. So when you're planning a lesson, actually the aim should be the first thing that you consider. So make an objective. Here's an example of an objective for a lesson. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to ask and answer about directions using where is the restaurant, go straight, turn left, etc. by doing a role play activity. So if you look at this objective now, you have by the end of the lesson, that gives you a time frame. Students will be able to, so that's a student-centered objective. We have ask and answer about directions, so there's your topic. We have the target language, where is the restaurant? And then we have the activity, doing a role play. Okay, so in this one sentence, we've got all the key information that we need for a lesson objective. Okay, so think about using objectives, and maybe we'll cover this in another video as well. Okay, so I believe this is the final tip now, and this is a really important tip. Even experienced teachers forget to do this, so I really want to stress this a lot. Don't teach. Okay, what you should do is teach and then check. Okay, so for example, teach some new words, do a checking activity, watch a short video, ask some questions to check they understood. Introduce a dialogue. Check they understand the key expressions. Do a role play. Check the student shared the right information. Okay, so notice every step has a checking stage. Okay, so when you're teaching, you should be checking. Okay, don't just teach, teach, teach. Include steps that check the student's progress, that check their understanding, that check they get the meaning, or they understand or they can formulate the grammar, for example. Okay, so think about including checking questions in your teaching, checking questions and checking activities and steps. Okay, so those are my 7 tips taken from the book by Jim Scrivener. Number 1, use the course book if there is one. Number 2, a lesson is a sequence of activities. Number 3, learn something about your students. Number 4, plan student-centered activities. Number 5, make a written plan of the order. Number 6, consider the aim of the lesson. And number 7, don't teach, teach, teach. Teach and then check. Okay, I hope that was useful, and it's given you some ideas about planning your first lesson. Thank you.